to me, there's requirements that a goal has to fit for it to actually be a goal and not a dream. And there's nothing wrong with dreams, but we want to talk about making sure that the things you're planning are actually what you're going to be getting done.
This is the Self-Recording Band Podcast, the show where we help you make exciting records on your own, wherever you are, DIY style. Let's go. Hello and welcome to the Self-Recording Band Podcast. I am your host, Benedict Hein, and I'm here with my friend and co-host, Malcolm Owen Flood. How are you, buddy?
Hello. I'm great, man. I've been having a heck of a good year so far. How about you?
Yeah. It had its ups and downs, but the good part is that I can finally say that the course is coming. I am I can't say it on the podcast now. I was hesitant to do that because I didn't really know when I was going to finish it, but now I'm so close to it. So if you're on that waiting list, which some people have been for a while now, it's not going to be long. And I'm just wrapping everything up. I've been uploading a bunch of videos the last couple of days. And it will be there very, very soon, and I cannot wait for this to finally be launched. So,
same here, man. Super excited. Where do people go if they want to get on that waiting list while they still can? Is it still possible?
If you still want to join that waiting list, you go to the selfrecordingband.com/academy waiting list. And I would highly recommend you join that list because there's going to be a special offer for you if you do. That's all I can say right now, but it's worth being on that list. So the selfrecordingband.com/academy waiting list, you can still get in. It's probably going to be a week or two. I don't know exactly, but there's still a chance to join that waiting list. And after that, you can officially just sign up for the course. But again, joining that list is recommended. So
yeah.
Yep.
Don't dilly-dally because depending on when this episode comes out, it could be very close to the launch.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so that's the most fun part. Other than that, I've made the most exciting studio purchase ever. And
what?
Yep. And it's not a piece of gear or anything, but I finally got myself an Aeron chair. This one.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh man. I'm so jealous.
I got the remastered, the new one, like the new version, like with all the features, like the full top model they have. I was wanting to do that for so long, but these last couple of weeks were so hard because I was sitting in my chair for like 14, 15 hours a day for 2 weeks straight, and like it hurt so much, and I started to feel so unhealthy, and I just thought, sitting is still bad and you need exercise and everything, but if I'm going through periods like this where I sit that much and work that much, at least I want to have a decent chair.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's so insanely worth it. The studio I interned at has one, and I thought that was just like, I didn't think back pain applied to me because I was in this good chair, and then I got my own place, and this chair is like, it's not ergonomic, and I've got like a cushion to like keep me sitting straight. And it's just I gotta pull the trigger, but they're expensive, man. They are expensive.
They are crazy expensive, but I thought of it that way. Like they give a 12-year warranty, and they are like built like a tank, and just so good that. If I'm really not gonna buy another chair for the next like 12 years, then it's like $100 a year or so for sitting in a really good chair. That's worth it to me.
For things that are like, because back damage is serious stuff. It's insanely worth it. You're right.
Like I'm sitting between all this expensive gear and I'm buying much stupider things regularly. So I thought there's no excuse anymore. I just had to do it.
That is so true. I spent as much as that chair on a guitar that I don't even play. It's just for my clients.
Which is important as well, but So that's been exciting. Yeah. And then, a couple of things are on the line as well here. I'm going to upgrade my converters soon, I guess. I just want to take certain things more seriously that I kind of that I didn't. I don't know. I was afraid to pull the trigger on, but it's time for those really important things to change now. So yeah,
awesome.
So how has it been for you, man? You said you had a great year so far.
Yeah,
what happened?
It's a good segue into our topic for today because I've been just like attacking my goals with a lot of ferocity, if that's a word.
Yeah.
And it's been going really well, and I've got like systems for how I'm doing it and that I'm trying out that are working really well as well, and it's all going great. Things are just I'm gonna have to make new goals if I keep up this pace because they'll be done soon. So it's awesome. Yeah. And that's, if you didn't pick that up, that's kind of what we want to be talking about today is being intentional and having goals and how to set good goals that you can achieve that have like, to me, there's requirements that a goal has to fit for it to actually be a goal and not a dream. And there's nothing wrong with dreams, but we want to talk about making sure that the things you're planning are actually what you're going to be getting done.
Agreed.
So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this because I've been talking about it all year.
Yeah, I mean, your other podcast, if you haven't checked it out, Malcolm has another podcast which is called Your Band Sucks at Business, and this is this is definitely a topic that you talk about a lot on that show.
Absolutely.
Because like goals are business related, and if you view your band as a business, which in most cases you should, even if it's just a hobby, like it's still an organization like a small business basically, and then goal setting and like, coming up with good goals that challenge you but that you can actually achieve and that will like move your band forward is just is what Malcolm, it's just part of what Malcolm does over there. And so if you want to check that out, it's your band sucks at business.com, right?
Exactly, you got it.
So yeah, this is an episode that Malcolm is really like primed for, and I wanted to do it because of a very specific reason. And that is, first of all, I thought about it a lot lately about the whole like, what do bands actually want when they record a record? Why do bands actually record a record? What's the point in recording something in the first place? Why do we do that as musicians, as artists? Why do the bands do that come to me when they want me to mix their record or produce their record? So these goals are different. And the main thing is that when I always ask people this, and the majority of people that I work with, at least like the unsigned newer bands, they don't really have an answer to that. Like I make them come up with an answer, but initially when I first asked this question, they are like, well, I mean, we just want to make a record that sounds as good as possible. And then when I try to dig deeper and ask why, and what are you trying to achieve with that record, and why do you want to spend all that money and put all that time and effort into that? What's the goal behind all this? They kind of struggle to come up with a good answer. Mm-hmm. And I wondered why that is. And then there was a specific moment where I thought, man, we need to do an episode on this. And that was when on my other podcast, I interviewed Jay Moss, the producer and like founding member of Defeater, if you know the band. I did an episode with him, and we kind of, I don't know how we got there, but at some point we talked about that as well. And he said a couple of things that I then took and posted quotes of him on my Instagram. One thing that he said was, if you're thinking about you when you're making a record, it probably has much less of a chance of being successful than if you're thinking about who it's for. And that really stuck with me, and I shared it. And then I got a lot of messages from people that were pretty like polarizing or pretty like different opinions. Some said they love it and like they need to think about that more, but others said they couldn't disagree more because they don't make music for other people, they make music for themselves, and they don't want to think about what people might want to hear. They just want to make their own art and express themselves as artists. And there's a truth in both of those statements, I think. And I personally don't think it's either or. It's like you can have the self-actualization. You can do what you want, whatever you want. You can invent things. You can be creative. You can do whatever you feel like. But at the same time, you can think about goals and an audience. And in fact, I think you should. And one doesn't exclude the other. So these were the thoughts and the things that came up lately that made me want to do this episode, because I think it's a little confusing. And whenever you say you should have goals, or you should think about an audience, or you should think what you want to achieve with the music, you get a lot of pushback often because people think that's not what music is supposed to be. They don't think it should be a business or, And I don't see that. I want to tell people that it doesn't have to be either or, basically.
I totally agree. I think what he said isn't entirely accurate. He said that it's probably going to be more successful if you think about who it's for. And I think in that context, successful means it's going to get listened to by people, right? By an audience that wants to hear that. And that's absolutely correct. Of course it's correct. You're making what they want to hear. The argument of, no, I don't make it for other people, I make it for myself, is not wrong in itself. That's totally awesome. And I think that's how a lot of the musicians I work with operate. And I love that. And that can be awesome. But it just means that they're hoping that people happen to like it.
Yeah.
Right? Which is totally fine. And that's obviously worked really well for some very successful artists in the past, right? Like you've got the magic in a bottle that just people want it. But I think his point is so valid and should be considered more often.
I totally agree. And I also think that if you make it for yourself, that's a goal as well. And there's an audience as well, because then the audience is all the people that are like you. So if you write lyrics or songs, if you write about your truth, your perspective, the way you see the world, the way you feel about certain things, or if you try to put certain emotions that you have into a song or on a record, then chances are there's somebody out there who feels the same way. So there you have your audience again. But then again, like even if you do that and you don't think about an audience, you still want to make that as impactful as possible. You still want people, when they listen to that, to feel the same way you did. You still want to create this emotional thing or whatever it is that you want to create. But even if it's just for yourself, it's not meaningless. It's like there is a goal behind it. There's something you want to achieve. And the audience thing could be the entire world or the mainstream music listener. It could be a small niche. It could be your grandma, or it could be you. But I think almost everybody thinks about some, or should think about some audience when they write or record songs or make records, even if it's just themselves. That, to me, that doesn't exclude like having goals and an audience.
Absolutely. There's one polarizing thought I have that might trigger people, but in my experience, the people who maybe lean towards writing for an audience, so they're like, I think people like our audience would like to hear this, that might sound less creative at first glance, right? It's like, you're trying to pump out a 3-minute radio hit kind of thing or something. It sounds like you're not being creative. But in my experience, the people that can do that are by a long shot the most creative people I've worked with.
Yes.
And I think that's because they've trained themselves. Like they treat creativity like a muscle that they got to work out. So they sit down for a writing session and they're like, I'm going to sit here until a song comes out and I'm going to write it in the style of the Eagles. Or, you know what, I want to write my own Sweet Home Alabama. And I'm just the worst song examples here ever. But listen, let's use a bunch of song examples that aren't relevant for 20 years. Actually, that's not true. Kid Rock had that like Sweet Home Alabama ripoff in it. He went huge. So,
yeah.
But I'm definitely not saying Kid Rock is the most creative guy on the planet. But like those people that when they get into the studio with you, they're like, you know what? I want to channel my freaking Paul McCartney on this tune, and here's some ideas that will do that. And it's like they've got different parts of creativity that they can tap into at will. It's amazing. So I just want to like say that I don't think not trying to do just what you personally want to do is any less creative. I think it can be more creative because you're actually having to force yourself out of your safety zone.
I absolutely agree. And also having these limitations within a genre or within something that you pick where you say like, I want to write something in this bucket. Having these limitations forces you also to be even more creative in a way because you don't want to sound like everyone else and you have these limitations, but you want to make something great nonetheless. Like I watched, I don't know if you know for you guys listening, if you know URM, like the Unstoppable Recording Machine, it's a great online academy for rock and metal mixers and producers. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. And one of their videos, their nailed mixes, they are called, is I watched one of them with Colin Britton, I don't know if you've watched that, Malcolm, with the Papa Roach one.
I haven't, but I've watched a lot of Colin's stuff. He's a fantastic mind.
Yes, and Colin is probably one of the most creative producers that I know of. Like he is like more artist than producer, more artist than mixer, producer, engineer. And he's in this Nail the Mix, in this video that I watched, he was talking about that exact thing. He said that like if you go in with a band and the goal is to make a radio single or a radio song, you know that it's gonna be like 3 minutes, 30 seconds. It's gonna have a chorus at this point. It's gonna have a certain structure that just works on the radio and that is expected to work there. But then the challenge becomes to still make a fucking like great song and like something that just stands out among all the other radio songs. And that forces you to be very, very creative, actually, because you now cannot do whatever you want anymore. You have these limitations and have to work within them. And then the challenge becomes to still make an awesome song in that. And whatever it is that you're trying to do, and even if it's just like whatever your niche is or your genre or the thing you set out to do, if there are limitations or if you think about an audience that this could be for, then the challenge is how can you make something that you are stoked on and that is just awesome, but still connects with those people. And if you can hit that, if you can nail that, that's like where it's really awesome and magical in a way. It's because I think the artists that are successful and who think about an audience or who have goals and create a record with those goals in mind, they still like their music, most of them. Like it's not that every successful artist makes shitty music just because people like it. Like that's not the case. They still like their music, hopefully, and I know for a fact that most do. And so again, not either or. It can be both. Like you should be stoked on what you're making. It should be authentic and true to you as an artist, but you can still reach a certain audience. And that's a beautiful thing. That's also not a bad thing at all. It doesn't have to do anything with sellout or anything to me, because, I mean, what's wrong about a lot of people enjoying your music and feeling certain emotions or like thinking about things that happen in their lives or whatever? Like you can really have an impact on people. You can change lives if you do it correctly, right? So there's nothing wrong about that.
I got to have a conversation with Jesse Cannon, who's somebody we both respect, I know, recently on Your Band Sucks at Business. And he kind of said something that blew my mind. He said that like most people listen to music because it brings up it's a mind-altering, an emotion-altering drug, essentially. So like they go because they want to feel something, and you get a feeling for what that band makes you feel. So like take Rage Against the Machine, for example. That's like political angry as fuck.
Yeah.
Lack of bed, like that's, you just have to say angry as fuck when you talk about Rage Against the Machine, because that's what it is, right? It's furious, and I love it. And like if I want to feel like that and angst out, like that band's gonna do it 100% of the time. What if they put out a new album that wasn't that, and it was like happy songs about dating girls at rock shows? or like, you know, like it's, I would be pretty devastated when I bought that album and checked it out. I'd be like, this is not giving me my fix anymore. I'm addicted to this other thing and it's not providing. That doesn't mean that it's wrong for them to do that, but it means that they made a decision that they didn't want to, they actually made a goal to do something different, and they did it, and that's going to impact my relationship with the band. If they were to do that, right, I would probably be listening to less Rage Against the Machine than I currently do. And they would have to find new fans with that, pretty much, right? It might seem like a small decision, because maybe, like we've been talking about, maybe they just followed their heart, and that's what they're writing right now. But that decision to just not do what their audience wants has huge implications on their career.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously, Rage Against the Machine did not do this.
No.
Just so we're clear.
No, but there have been a couple of examples of bands who did it well or not so well. So there are bands who made a change or decided to do something risky, do something new, and some of them changed completely and like put out that album that you just were talking about, like a complete switch, like 180 degrees, the whole record. And that is a pretty risky thing to do. And oftentimes it's like sometimes it works, but often it alienates a lot of people, and it's not always guaranteed that you find a new audience that is just as big. But some bands do it in a wise way. They just say, okay, let's try like 1, 2, or 3 new songs on that next record that are different and see how they work and how our fans like them. And then based on the feedback and based on how well those songs do, they might go further in that direction or not. So there is a wise way to do that. And yeah, some people manage to do that very well, and for other bands, it means the end of the career sometimes. So.
Right, yeah. Well, I think those bands that do it really well are planning and setting these goals in advance, right? Band that comes to mind is Bring Me the Horizon.
Yeah.
They went from like very screamo to very melodic over many years, but like just so successfully have they made that transfer. They for the most part kept their original fans and gained millions of others, right? Like hugely successful swap in genres there. I mean, it's still in like the heavy world, their genre, you know, but it's pretty dramatically different. I think if they had released their latest album and then their first album back to back, it probably wouldn't have been a very successful transition for them.
Yes.
I guess that's speculation, but
absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, if you listen to their latest stuff, they have a lot of like electronic, more than they had before, a lot of electronic elements in there. They have features with all sorts of pop artists, and it's a wild like genre mix at this point, basically. But there are still heavy songs on there, but it's like, it's all sorts of things mixed together. But the transition has been smooth, as you said. And they did it very well. No matter like if you like that band or not, but you just got to say they did it very well. And so when we come back to the whole goals thing,
yes,
what would you say if like you have that conversation probably a lot of times as well with artists, or every single time probably, what's the point? Why do people make records in the first place? Why do we record things and put them out in the world? And what do people want to achieve most of the time?
I remember when my band got asked this by our producer for our last album, Eric Ratz. And it was like one of the most embarrassing moments of our lives. He just flew across the country, and Canada's a big country, so he made a big trip, fucking rents a car and drives up to our jam space to like come and do some pre-pro with us and asks us flat out why we do this. And all of us had a different answer, and they were all stupid. I can't even remember what they were. And he was just like, no, it's to connect with people. That's why you make music. And it was like, yeah, that's right. Okay. But we just didn't. We wanted to. We definitely. I don't think it was like, oh, we don't want to do this. It was like we all knew we definitely wanted to be doing that more than anything in the world, but we didn't. We hadn't had the conversation as to why amongst ourselves. And we, at that time we were hanging out 5 days a week. So realize that if you're listening to this, you got to chat with your band about this, because you're not all on the same page. And maybe you are, but you just like haven't figured out what that page even is. And it's a huge conversation to have, right? Like, do you guys want to be like, is somebody doing it because they just love performing? That's kind of what I was in a big way, was like, I love the being on stage and connecting with people that way. But I think our singer, I'm going to speak for him, but I think it was more about the creating music behind the scenes kind of thing. I don't think the touring was for him. So like different, we both want to be doing it, but at different levels is where our priority is, which is a really important thing to figure out before you're touring too much kind of thing, right? Yeah. So there could be a long rabbit hole of a conversation that comes out of that simple question: why are you doing this?
Yeah, it could very well turn out that you're not on the same page, and that could cause problems. And it's very good to talk that out before you go into a project, because if you find out halfway through that some people in the band want to tour or want to put in a lot of effort in promoting the record, while another person's like just doesn't have more time, or like doesn't want to be as active, or is just a side thing for them and you want to do it full time or whatever it is, if you find that out halfway through the project, that is not good. So you want to do that before. And also I think, and I believe that so much, that's why producers ask that question is, I think that your goal and why you're doing this in the first place and who it's for and all that has such a big impact on how the record's going to turn out and what you're actually going to do. You're not just going somewhere and capturing some songs that you have written. You are making a record, something that will last hopefully for hundreds of years, that will a lot of people will listen to and or should probably or hopefully listen to. And that's just important. That's just I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, it's not just capturing something because you can, but there is some motivation behind it. And you might not have talked about this or you might not know it for yourself right now, but deep in your heart, I believe that there's some reason why you are doing this. It could be that you want to impress your friends. It could be that you actually hate your job and you wish you could be a musician. It could be that, I don't know, whatever it is, it could be different goals behind it. It could be that you're already somewhat successful, but you want to get signed to a bigger label because then you see this or that opportunity, or you want to be a support of your favorite band one day, or like there could be very specific goals like that, but it could just be like self-actualization, or it could be like impressing your friends, as I said. And that's a totally valid goal. And some people just want other people to like them and to like their art and what they put out. That's enough for some people, but that is a goal. Like, if you want to make something where other people come to you and say, wow, that record sounds sick, or that is like, those are great songs. If that's your goal, then you better make something that makes people say that. So,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even the song could have a goal, right? Like, maybe you want this song to be an anthem for some group of people or for some event going on in the world. Like System of a Down just releasing those singles about Armenian like genocide and stuff. Like those singles have goals that are like bigger than most people's dreams on their own, right? Like, it's very purpose-driven music that they've recorded and released, which is pretty amazing. And yeah, like, so I think you have to think about like why you're all invested into being a band in the first place, and then what your goal is for the album you're recording as a whole, and then break it down even further to what is the goal for this song? What is the point of this song? Does it have something bigger that we need to keep in mind while we make it? Because like you said, that's going to probably end up altering how you write it, record it, and even mix it, and release it. It's going to change everything.
Yes, totally. Like, and beyond those, like, rather selfish goals or like goals about you and your band, there could be, as you said, bigger goals about other people or other things, or like, things that are important to you. And it could be that you want to make people feel a certain way or think about something a certain way. And it can be something political, of course, but it can also be, if you want to make a sad song, if you want to really make a song that makes people cry or makes people like get nostalgic or whatever, like if it's some emotional song, it's worth knowing that goal and being aware of what songs like that sound like. Because if you're going to record that and you are like, you're having a blast and everything's cool and you're joking around and you're having the best day of your life, I don't know if you can record a sad song in a convincing way. Maybe you need to get yourself into that mental state where you think of something that makes you nostalgic or sad or whatever. Maybe maybe if you want to record a very angry song, maybe if you're working with your singer, you record vocals and you want to make a really angry, pissed off song, maybe you need to make that singer pissed off for the moment just so that it really sounds like that, or I don't know. If you want to make authentic art that makes people feel a certain way or that gets a certain message across, and it's not just your own goals, what you want to achieve with that, but if it's about what the song does for other people and how it makes people feel, if you think about those types of goals, it absolutely matters, and it changes the way you record and produce records and songs.
Absolutely. There's, I mean, this is getting pretty fringe, but there's a lot of acting in music.
Yeah.
Where if you watch somebody act and it's an emotional scene, you're meant to feel that way, right? It goes back to like, you're meant to be getting your emotions altered by this stuff. And it's absolutely true with music as well. If you're not selling what you're meant to be selling when you record that, it's not going to get through. People just won't connect with it, I don't think. So it's harder than people give credit for, and more important as well. I got to think about that more. Now, to get back to goals, I think there's some like really fundamental and important processes to setting a goal that we should totally cover.
Go ahead.
Because it's really easy to have like a fluffy conversation about it without actually doing it or acknowledging that something's truly important and is going to be a priority for accomplishing. So number one, when you have this meeting, and I would encourage it to be a meeting if you're a band, like have everybody there, open conversation. It's good. But also feel free to do it on your own. Write it down. Write everything that's labeled important down on a piece of paper. And if you're a band, you should put it up on like a whiteboard where everybody can see it every time you come in. That's proven to be like the single most important thing I've done this year, is just constantly reviewing the things that I told myself are the most important things in the world to me. So write it down. But beyond writing it down, you have to write it down as an action. Here, I'm going to pull up a little cheat sheet. Easy outline for you. It's called SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. So pretty much, if you're following that, all of those criteria kind of need to be have to be met in the way that you write it down. So specific means like you can't say, I want to make a good sounding album. That's like too vague, right? I want to make the heaviest, most brutal sounding album ever that terrifies people when they hear it. That's pretty specific, right? Measurable. So you have to have something to compare it to. That can be tricky, but it's really valuable as well. Don't skip that. Attainable. That's tricky with music, but less tricky with maybe what you want the music to do. Maybe that is you want it to be heard by 1 million people. That's an attainable goal. That's lofty, but possible, right? And you can track how attainable it is and how the progress you're making. Relevant, obviously, don't make goals for your band to play Machu Picchu. That's not going to do anything for you. And then time-based. And I think that time-based is huge. You have to set a time frame for when you're going to be completing this by. And then, like I said, put it somewhere you can see it every day. And you're going to keep working towards it. If you keep that in front of you, if you literally force yourself to look at it every day, you're going to have to acknowledge that you did or did not work towards that goal each day. That's really valuable. I can't recommend doing that enough. I do it every single night now before I go to sleep.
Yes.
Sometimes it's like, I really don't want to have to like look at myself in the mirror like this, because it's like, I didn't make progress over this weekend. I was a lazy turd. All right, let's see.
Yeah. I totally agree. I do that as well. I write down like the SMART goals thing, of course, but even if I just write down like my top priority or like top 3 things that are most important to me, and I compare my actions every day to those priorities that I wrote down, often there is a disconnect. Often there is I write down something and I really think those are the 3 most important things, and then I observe myself. I watch what I'm doing the whole day, and I find that most of the things I'm doing are not helping me get to those. Like, are not helping me improve in those areas or serve those people or whatever it is that are most important to me. So that, I think what you just said with like put it somewhere where you can see it and where the whole band can see it does 2 things. First of all, it stays top of mind and you're constantly checking like if you're making progress, but also you need to compare, and that makes it much easier. Then you need to compare constantly if what you're doing as a band aligns with those goals, and if what you're telling other people or what you're putting into a project, if that makes sense when you look at your goals, like if that gets you closer to achieving that. So, for example, if you talk to a mixer or a producer or a label, like if you record yourself, obviously listening to this podcast, but let's say you talk to a label and you have an external person mix the record, and you tell them you want to sound like, or you really like these bands because like you list them a number of bands that you really look up to, and you like their records, you like what they're doing, and you basically want to be in that spot. You have some specific goals that are specific to you, what you want to achieve, and then they listen to your demos, and it's clear that you like whatever it is, like the drummer is absolutely not on that level, is not tight enough, or the vocalist cannot sing in tune, or the lyrics suck, or you don't have a budget that is remotely close to what you would need to make a record at that level, or whatever it is. There might be something that you totally missed that these bands that you look up to all did in order to get to where they are, and you have these goals that you want to be there as well, but you absolutely don't do the things necessary to get there. And that's, you can call it delusional or whatever, but that's what many people are, and sometimes they are not even aware of it. They just think, we make a killer sounding record and then hopefully it's going to be successful. But all the steps necessary and every single thing you do with your band in the process of making a record and then promoting it and talking to labels or other people or whatever it is, all these things matter. And if you have those goals written down and you look at them and then you compare your actions to them, you might find that something's not not working out here, and you will clearly see why.
Absolutely. I really love the comparing your actions to your goals that you wrote down. Like, do they reflect what I did today and what I'm like, the decisions I'm making through the day? Like, okay, so I said I wanted to do this, but I ended up working on this other thing. That like you have to kind of look, like I said, look at yourself in the mirror and be like, okay, smarten up.
Yeah. And there are people who are very aware of that as well. It's not, I'm not saying, I don't want to like act as if bands were always delusional or whatever. Like, there are a lot of bands out there who are very aware of where they're at and where they want to be, and it's not the case for every band, of course. And there are bands that I just had a conversation with a band this week where they said they wanted to sound like, or they really liked the sound of certain records, but they knew they could never play drums at that level, and so they were totally fine with like programming drums. They hoped it could be organic in the end and sound like real drums. And we talked about that, and they were obviously like, they were afraid that it would sound, that it wouldn't sound organic or cool. But on the other hand, they knew if they were going to track real drums, they would never get the result they were going for. And I thought that was pretty cool, because a lot of bands don't do that, but they did. And so there's that.
Yeah, that's like a huge amount of self-awareness and being able to rein in an ego to make that decision. Like, that's rarer than it should be. It's pretty rare. That's cool. I adopted a workflow hack, I'm calling it, that I broke my day into hour-long blocks, which I guess we all have. But on the back of my phone is a breakdown of that day, and like it's got like, you know, like the first 2 hours are for like just like personal development stuff. The next hour is for this podcast. The next hour is for podcasts in general. I've got like an hour block every day. So, and then there's, you know, like my studio time, there's my exercise time, and it's just all in blocks. And every time I open my phone, I get reminded of it, which is great. But if I made all of those blocks with all of my goals in mind for the year, so that I know if I do one thing in each of those blocks, it's actually, I am making progress towards all the goals I had for the year. Like, it's just, if I stick to this, I will get to my destination eventually. There's no question, because I am putting the time into the right things if I stick to this schedule. And that's been really helpful for me. I made a whole podcast on that if you guys want to check it out as well.
Yeah, it's time to plug the podcast anyways. Again, I think, what's the episode?
So that episode is episode 42, Hacking Your Phone to Boost Productivity Instead of Killing It. And then you got to check out the one before as well, which is all about goals as well. But yeah, we've been, it's the start of the year. So, you know, like as a business mindset podcast, we got to talk about that stuff and make sure people get started on the right foot. But yeah, totally check that out if you're digging this kind of content. And then also I do have what is called the 5-step release guide, but it's a lot of that content is also about this stuff as well. So if you want that PDF little mini ebook thing, just shoot me a DM on like Facebook or Instagram. That's probably the easiest way, and then I'll just shoot it over to you. I like meeting you guys too. So this forces you to message me.
Awesome. I'm gonna put that in the show notes, but you can.
Yeah, I'll give you the link there too.
Exactly. But you can message Malcolm. Of course. Yeah, I had just had a look at it, and it's really good. So download that. I highly recommend it. So again, back to the pushback that people give me when these topics come up, and it's kind of a difficult thing to talk about. But what would you say, Malcolm, when you were in a conversation, and I had that conversation in my own band at some point, where we locked ourselves in a studio, a different studio. We locked ourselves up there to write songs for a week, and we did nothing. Like, it was away from like a major city. It was just, we were there all day, 24 hours writing songs. And at some point I was like, maybe this would go faster or smoother, or we would come up with more great ideas if we would think about what we're actually trying to do here. Like that whole topic that we're talking about right now. I was just bringing it up and saying, hey, we've been jamming for a while. We came here with a bunch of riffs that we had already, and we were trying to piece these together and create songs. But what are we actually doing here? What's the record gonna be like in the end? Does any one of you see like the record already? Like, can you imagine what it's gonna be like, how it's gonna feel, what's the vibe gonna be, what's the song's gonna be? I don't see the vision yet, and I don't know what we're creating here. And I'm having a hard time just jamming or putting riffs together. Like, it would be much easier for me. That's what I said when I had that goal in mind. That's maybe just the way my brain works. I'm not much of a jam person who just like takes an instrument and then goes for 2 hours and then something magical happens. That's not how it works for me. I'm a planner. That's who I naturally am. So, and that again might seem very uncreative to a lot of people. And then we kind of got into this discussion where someone else in the band agreed and someone completely disagreed and said, like, I don't want to plan this out. This is art. This is music. This is creativity. I don't want to have a plan. I just want to play. I just want to make like magic happen. I just want to wait for that moment, and I just want to see what comes out of this, and we'll see what the record will be like in the end. And we were kind of stuck. So we didn't, like, that discussion didn't really go anywhere because I had my opinion, he had his opinion. And what would be your opinion on this? Like, how would you see that? Is it still
like, how do you
art?
solve that? Because now you've got a different sort of opinions inside of a band, right? So, I mean, I would say, and this is obviously not the easiest answer, but like, you kind of got to go and meet in the middle and do both. And I think that would be the conversation to have. Like, could you agree that, okay, well, let's stick with that plan, the jam session for this writing session, but then let's afterwards do it my way as well, and we'll have like a targeted writing session as well with a plan in mind. And then, you know, like, you're going to end up with different results, obviously, out of both those things. Hopefully they land on the same page. And, you know, there's always some kind of compromise. Like, maybe by going the jam route, maybe it's a little harder for you at the beginning, but maybe a vision starts to come as you get more and more song ideas together. And then you can be like, all right, I'm starting to pick up some trends here. Can we stick with this, like where this song is going? I think this is like where we need to be versus this first idea we had. You know, maybe you have to bide your time in that situation.
Yeah, I think I agree. And I say I'm not a jam person, but I can do that if I have some bucket or some limitations. If I know we're going to make a very angry song, I can, like, it's much easier for me. That's basically all I need to know for now then in that situation, because then when someone plays a riff or when there's a groove or some part, I can compare that to what we just said and can say, does that sound angry or not? And then it makes it much easier than just going without anything, you know? So there's a middle ground definitely there. And I don't know why that I haven't found the solution for myself as well. Like, what art or creating art should really be, how much it should be planned and how much is just happening.
Yeah. I think it changes. Like, I've done 180s on that before, where I've been like, okay, no limitations, like nothing, like any idea is valid. And then polar flips to like, okay, like, we're only allowed to use 3 chords this song. What's going to come out? Like, you know, like, and that can be cool too. You know, or I love a lot of like pop music where they're like, okay, we're just going to start with a groove and we have to riff off this, and like the groove is always going to be there. It's going to be as simple as it can be, and that can be awesome too, or starting with a melody, like starting with limitations like that. Okay, like nobody write a guitar riff. We're starting with a vocal melody. We're going backwards here for a rock band, right? That can be awesome.
Yeah, totally. And what would you say to the other major pushback when people say, like, I don't care about, like, my band is not a business. I don't care about all these, like, achievements, or, like, I don't care about labels, about touring, about whatever. I just want to make a great piece of art, and I don't care if people hear it or not. But they still want to make a great piece of art. So there's obviously going to be the problem of it's going to cost money, time, or effort, or all of those to make a great piece of art, but then it's not an investment, it's just an expense because no one's going to listen to it, and or like if that's what eventually if that's what people say, like if they say I don't care if anybody listens to it, and so you got to be okay with like it costing a lot of money and time and effort, and there were no return on investment there. But when like is there still a goal then for you in that case if someone says I'm really just making this because I want to make the best record that I can make, and I want to put all my ideas and my creativity into this, and I'm willing to pay, and it doesn't have to be an investment, and if people like it, cool. If not, then not. Is there still a goal or a strategy there, or should there be?
This is a really reduced analogy that doesn't really do it justice, but last year I had a really great year in business, and I bought myself a watch as like a present for myself, and I was like, I love watches, and I was like, I'm buying myself a nice watch, and I did it. That's kind of what that is. It's like I want to make myself happy, and it's better, like because I didn't make the watch. Like this is much more creative and personal than buying a watch, but it's kind of, I think, like for the folks that aren't in it for to win. They're just in it to make art, and like that's so valid. That is and that's a beautiful thing. And I'm sure some amazing music does come out of that as well. That like they just truly don't care if anybody hears it. They just need it to exist, and they're making it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it's just, you just got to be then okay with it being for you, and not expect everybody to go and support it and care about it.
Yes.
Right.
And that includes people you work with, because
yes,
you might still need help with some parts of it, but you can't expect other people to be as invested in it as you are for those same reasons. So
it's a great point.
That can often be difficult because those types of people sometimes don't understand that other people, that their time is valuable, or that things cost money, or that whatever. So you got to be okay with the fact that that it's your project, and it then might not be a return on investment, and not everybody will be as stoked on it as you are. And again, I can hardly think, and that's why I asked this question in the first place, I can hardly think of a situation where someone, even in that situation, wouldn't still have some sort of goal, or wouldn't still want someone to listen to that. Because that gets us back to the initial question. What's the point then? I mean, it's only music if it comes out of speakers, right? Others, like if it doesn't, it's just a file on a hard drive. And if you make a record, even just for yourself, because you want to make the greatest record ever, if no one ever listens to that, not even like your friends or whoever it is, what's the point? I don't believe that many people really just want to have a file on a hard drive.
It's pretty weird because it's like, why did you need to record it then? Like,
yeah, you could just play.
Like
you could just grab a guitar and play it for yourself in that moment. Like the whole point of recording something in the first place is for someone to be able to listen to it, I think.
Yeah. I really struggle with even like trying to imagine that mindset, because that's just the opposite of how I'm wired. Like I'm just obsessed with trying to take some small idea and turn it into a business. So like I really have a hard time like putting myself in their headspace for somebody that would be on like thinking like that, and I'm not sure if I accurately can.
I think I do care so much about that and think about that so much because I was brought up in like the punk hardcore scene where people are like, if you say business, that's that's a red flag right then and there, like,
Mm.
and I've been that way for a very long time until I realized that not all businesses are bad, and that it's not a bad thing to start something, build something that's actually helpful and valuable to others. And that before I realized that the bands I admired, or the labels, or the promoters, or shows, or whatever I went to, that those were all like small businesses, even if they didn't call it that, but that's what they are. And that a business can also be not like a nonprofit thing or whatever. But for the longest time, I didn't realize that, and business was bad by default. And a lot of people still think that way. And a lot of the bands that I'm working with, or like not working with, a lot of the bands that I talk to or meet still have that sort of mindset and that's why it's so important to me, because I can understand where they are coming from. I can understand that sort of mindset. And the whole topic of like still having a goal for a record or making a plan is just foreign for them. And they cannot put themselves in the mindset that we have right now. And I just try to understand that, and just try to still have a conversation with bands like that, and help bands still get the record out that they want to make. Because I know for a fact that some listeners of this podcast and some of my email subscribers are in punk bands, and their goals will never be like, this should be a business, or so like many people should listen to our records or whatever. They just have a message that they want to get out, or they are just enjoying playing music in front of a couple of people with their friends, and that's the best thing, and the energy in the room and all that. And they just need something to give to people after the show. And that might be the whole goal, But even in those cases, then I always dig deeper and say, well, then your goal is to get that message across, even if it's just for 100 people. Or then your goal is that someone leaves that show, takes the record with them, goes home, listens to that record, and has that same feeling again, or at least as close as possible to what they experienced at the show. Like, there are so many goals still in that, even if you don't view it as a business, that I think it's just so important. And in that case, if I want to capture a record like that, or if you want to capture a record like that, and you still don't want to half-ass it. You want to capture something that creates that emotion, or that gets that message across. And it might not be a commercial goal, but there is still a very strong goal there. And you can hit it, or you can fail terribly, and you can have a record that does nothing for you and for nobody else.
Right. Totally agree. I think I also just now realized why I haven't done very much punk music. They don't want me.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's tough, and it has been for me a lot, because I needed to unlearn a lot of these things, but still stay true to those values that I still have. And like, it's really tough, and that's why this whole topic is so relevant for me, and I think about that so much. And it's a very fine line that I'm constantly also walking here, because I know that when I go on a podcast, for example, I've been interviewed by a business podcast here in Germany at some point, where I was supposed to talk about my recording business and like the business side of making music. And I knew for a fact that if I was going to talk about those things, it will be very weird for a lot of people who know me as like the punk and hardcore producer or musician or whatever. Right. And for me, again, it's not either or, but this whole goal setting,
like a culture around it.
Yeah, there's so much around it that it really is something that I constantly think about. And I believe so much in that having goals, trying to achieve something, trying to build something, being strategically about something is not a weird thing, not a bad thing, and can absolutely be done by a punk band just as it can be done by a major artist.
Oh, hell yeah. For sure. I mean, there's been some really big, successful punk bands, and you can bet that they've got some organization skills going on.
Yes.
Anybody that's done like a big tour, they're organized as hell. Like, there's so much going on.
Oh yeah, totally. And those bands, when they have a strong message, or when they are punk bands and there's no commercial goal or whatever behind it, which oftentimes still is, then it's beautiful to reach a lot of people with that message, right? Like, why would you want to not, like why would you people, why should people not listen to your message if you put in the effort to create that message in the first place? So,
yeah, it's kind of, I mean, this is like, we're down the rabbit hole, but punk is very message fueled. Like, there's a point for what we're saying.
Yes.
A lot of the times. So interesting.
Yeah. Back to the original thing now to wrap it up. The SMART goals thing, I think needs to be. You need to say that one more time, or you need to give people some actionable things in the end of this conversation today, because this one was not like a list episode or like actual things, but I just wanted to do that because it's just important to me, and it's really the whole point of making a record. And I want you to think about those things before you go in and make a record. I want you to do all that. And that framework that you have for them, Malcolm, the SMART goals thing, and your download and everything, that is going to help you do that if you've never done that before.
For sure. For the record, I did not make SMART goals.
Yeah.
I'm sure you knew that, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear. You can Google it. You'll find tons. But we'll run through that list again. It's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. If you can add more criteria, great. But honestly, the biggest takeaways that I really hope everybody that's listening does is you just write down your goals. And if they don't happen to fit the SMART goals thing very well, that's okay. You still took a really big step. Next thing is put it somewhere that you're going to review it constantly. That could be above your bed, on the background of your phone, or on the whiteboard in your jam space. And, like we said, this was all in the context of your band, but you should really do this with yourself as well, just like personally. There should be a couple lists going on here. And then if there were some more actionable things that I can't recommend enough, is just like doing a little analysis at the end of every day. I write down the 3 things that I want to do the next day, like the primary tasks that I think I need are most important things for me to get done. Always get written down the day before. So that that decision is already made for me, and it's all clear because I've been thinking about that stuff all day. So that's huge for me. Write it down. Will do so much. It's kind of one of those woo-woo things, but it really is just like it becomes real once you're reading it off a page and you put it there. So can't recommend that enough. If you want to learn more about that kind of stuff, like I said, there's been like a couple podcasts recently on the Your Band Sucks at Business podcast. I think it's episode 41 and 42. And then there is that 5 steps to a successful music release guide that I made up as well. And like I said, just go to the show notes for this episode. There'll be a link there, or you can just shoot me a DM on Instagram and I'll send it over to you there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'll post it in the Facebook community as well, I guess. That'd be an easy spot.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. selfrecordingband.com/community, or just search it on Facebook. Absolutely. Cool. Thank you. Well, I don't know if we or I did a good job today with that topic, because it was not as organized as we typically are, but I just wanted to have a conversation about this, and I hope it was helpful and got you thinking about these things if you haven't already before. And I just want more bands reaching out to people like us, or doing it on their own completely with something in mind that they want to build and create, and that you can be stoked on once you have it, whatever that may be. But that's another thing. You're going to be so much more happy about the final thing if you've actually achieved what you set out to do. If it's just not some random outcome that might be cool, but you don't know what the full potential might have been. But if you really set out to do something and then it happens and you make it happen, that's the best feeling ever. And so, yeah, I really hope that inspires some of you to do that. And I'd love to get more clear answers to that question in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like when I get something in the mix and there isn't like a clearly outlined goal, I kind of take it upon me to try and figure it out based on what I'm hearing. It's like, okay, what am I picking up from these tracks? That's the direction that I think it's meant to be. But it'd be great to have more info going into those decisions. Yeah, this could be pretty hit or miss in some cases. If like I had the situations where I did exactly that, and turns out my vision was not what the band wanted with this record. Yeah. This could totally happen. So this would avoid that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
See you next week.